Are you a small business owner struggling to nail down your brand voice? Have you hired copywriters only to discover that they couldn't capture your messaging? If that sounds like you, then you need to download my free resource, Discover Your Brand Voice in 3 Easy Steps. Once you complete these simple prompts, you will have a solid foundation for producing your business copy, whether you decide to write your own content or outsource it to a professional, like, say, me. As an added bonus, you'll be automatically subscribed to my email list where you can learn more about my writing services and receive weekly updates about my podcast, Emotional Abuse is Real. Head over to the link in the show notes to grab Discover Your Brand Voice in 3 Easy Steps today. Hello, everyone. It's me, Serene. Instead of my usual Emotional Abuse is Real content this week, I have another special bonus episode for your listening pleasure today. I'm back as a guest on Krista Dykes' Secret Mom Hacks podcast, and this time we are talking about one of my favorite topics, self-care for moms. And a quick note on that. You do not have to be a mom to indulge in any of the self-care suggestions that I make on this episode. Everyone needs self-care, period. On a self-care adjacent subject, Krista also allows me to share about my terrible experience with a postpartum doula 8 years ago when my daughter was born. To be clear, I think postpartum doulas offer wonderful support to moms, but as you'll discover from listening to my cautionary tale, it's imperative that you do your research before hiring someone for this critical period after your child arrives. As always, I'm so grateful to Krista for letting me chat with her about these subjects, and I'm thrilled to now share it as a bonus on my own podcast feed. Emotional Abuse is Real will return with brand new guests next week on October 23rd. Until then, please enjoy this bonus episode of my recent appearance on Secret Mom Hacks.
This is Secret Mom Hacks, episode number 86. My name is Krista, and I'm your host. It's September 25th, 2024, and on today's show, I am thrilled to bring you part 3 of a 4-part series with my friend and fellow podcast host, Serene Leeds. That name should ring a bell if you caught episodes 80, 77, and my first ever bonus episodes I released back around episode number 70. Serene hosts the Emotional Abuse is Real podcast and was so kind to invite me onto her show to share about narcissistic abuse and the betrayal trauma I endured in my first marriage. I'm tossing her the mic for today's show, where she'll be talking about self-care and what she wished she knew about postpartum doulas. But before we get into that, I just want to say thanks for tuning in, Mama. I started this podcast because babies don't come with instructions. As of this recording, I'm chasing around a 6-year-old that no amount of Googling, mom groups, or books were able to prepare me for. There's a lot of stuff people don't talk about when it comes to pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, postpartum. And as someone who was previously terrified of childbirth, parenthood, and all that follows, I'm here to help you pull back the curtain on all of it. And every now and then, it may get a little messy. We may share a little TMI, but that's why you're here, right? My goal is you'll leave every episode feeling refreshed, inspired, and hopeful, knowing you're not on this mom journey alone. Now, there's a lot of subject matter to cover when it comes to mom life, and we are covering it all. If you're not following this podcast yet, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. Now, let's hop into part 3 of my 4-part series with Serene Leeds, host of Emotional Abuse is Real. Let's dive right in talking about a really important topic I know to both of us, which is self-care, and also a postpartum doula and what that is. And I'm really excited about this part of our conversation. So Serene, you are a busy podcast host like myself. You're a mom, a wife, a writing professional, just to name a few of the many hats you wear. What does self-care look like for you amidst juggling all of these responsibilities?
Well, Krista, it changes all the time. It really, really, really does. It's really interesting because my current Instagram started as a self-care for moms account. And it was great. I loved it. But after a little while, I realized it wasn't really the right angle I was going for. So I switched it over to just my professional writing account. But I'm always talking about self-care because I did not realize how important self-care was for all humans, but especially for mothers until obviously I first became a mother. And in 2018, when my daughter was about 2 years old, not quite 2 years old, I got really sick and I landed in the hospital for the first time other than when I gave birth. I was diagnosed with a colon infection called C. difficile. I don't know if you are familiar with it, but it was really, really, really scary. Up until that point, I had been relatively healthy. Like I said, the only time I'd ever really spent like overnight in a hospital was when I gave birth to my daughter. So it started because I had had some issues with kidney stones on and off since like 2012. And unfortunately, in 2017, the kidney stone issues started resurging, and I had a major operation in late 2017. But since then, I was battling more UTIs, more kidney infections, and all of those antibiotics finally culminated in spring 2018, and I landed in the hospital in the emergency room, and I was diagnosed with C. difficile, which is, like I said, it's a very scary colon infection where, and this was pre-COVID, so this was my first experience with like isolation. I knew something was wrong because it was like midnight, and I noticed they were evacuating my 90-something-year-old roommate. And I was like, oh my God, it was so scary. I felt so sick. I don't want to get into how graphic it is. You guys can all Google it, C. difficile. If you want, I have written an article about it, but it required major, major antibiotics. And my daughter had to be isolated from me for a week. She was staying with my parents. I'm so grateful to them. Anyway, that was just a huge wake-up call that I had to start taking care of myself. And I started really getting into the idea of self-care because, so I'm a baby Gen Xer. And for me, I just don't remember my mom like ever really setting aside time to take care of herself. It was always, motherhood was just always such a selfless act, and we should only think about the children. And so this medical emergency really, really scared me. And it helped me to realize that I had to start engaging in self-care. So I started making it a priority. And the motto that I started living by was, it's cliche, but you know how when you're on an airplane, you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on the children. Now, I always thought that that was fascinating because I could never imagine my mother doing something like that. But I learned, yeah, if you want to be a good mom, you have to do that. So I started doing lots of different things over the years. I started doing yoga more. I started making sure I was getting better sleep. I was voicing my desire to my husband and to my family. Like, I need some time to myself. So, like I said, it changes all the time because we're busy moms. You know that. So it's impossible to maintain the same self-care routine all the time. But as of today, I insist on a 3-mile walk every day because I love walking so much. I absolutely love it. Every other day, I do free weights. It's, again, cliche, getting out into nature. Getting that fresh air is so important. Therapy. Therapy is a huge part of my self-care because it wasn't just my physical health that I needed to start taking better care of. It was my mental health. I'm pretty sure that when I was hit with C. diff, I was between therapists. So I made sure to start seeing a therapist again. And for me now, for reasons that we are going to get into later, self-care is having the peace and quiet that I need during the weekday while my daughter is in school so I can work and so I can do my podcasting. I love the work that I do and I love podcasting, and I actually view both as self-care. So the time when my daughter is at school for me is sacrosanct. And it's really made a difference in my well-being and how I feel about my life. And finally, yes, it's a cliche, but I am one of those women who loves going to the spa.
Same.
I mean, massages are good. Massages are good for you. I mean, I make sure that of course, my local spa is always like, yeah, you got to come here once a month. And I was like, yeah, nice try. But yeah, I really do enjoy a time at the spa because it feels good. And so I would say in general, for me right now, having the time, the peace and quiet to get my work done and do my podcasting, walking, some free weights, getting out into nature, breathing that fresh air, and therapy. Those are my forms of self-care.
Love those. And it's so true with how life is so crazy. And if you only have one, that's okay. But it is important to have that variety because whatever the weather looks like or whatever other commitments you have on your schedule, it's that flexibility is important. Because it's easy to make excuses and just be like, oh, well, this happened. And so now I just don't have the time.
Exactly. Yes. So true.
What advice do you have for moms on how to prioritize their well-being and enhance our feelings of self-worth?
No joke. I can prove it to you right here because I have my planner right next to me. Write down your chosen form of self-care in your planner, on your phone, in your calendar. Schedule them into your routine, because I believe that you are less likely to ignore those activities when you see them in black and white on your schedule. I have a paper passion planner. I also use the Google Calendar, and it has color-coded every day. I write walk and do weights, or I write yoga. If you have an accountability partner, whether it's real or virtual, I think that's great too. I actually love the fitness app on my phone because it tells me, hey, Serene, you didn't close your ring today.
Yes.
And you know what? I do need that. Yes, it says
there's
the
still
greatest
time
thing to happen to
there's
my
still
walking
time
habit.
to close your rings today. Okay, you and I need to connect on our Apple Watches.
Yes.
Apple Fitness.
Yes.
Because it does. It motivates me so much. If I run, I don't run every day. So on the days that I don't run, I walk. So I am a fellow walker, and I'm all about closing those rings.
Yay.
Serene.
Oh, so am I. And not just that, but yeah, it's my phone. And also my daughter will tell me, like, did you close your ring today? And you know what I do? If I didn't get a chance to close my ring outside, you will see me walking back and forth in our home. I'll do it because I don't want the guilt.
It is.
I don't want the guilt.
Nice. It's like this little virtual tap on your shoulder or wrist rather of like, hey, come on, like, just spend 15, 20 more minutes. You can do it. That's great.
Yeah, totally. And also, I mean, we all feel this way as mothers. Sometimes we feel that the demands of our home life are so strong and that our partner or our kids are preventing us from prioritizing our well-being and self-care. So that's when you need to communicate with them, and not in an angry or demeaning manner, just in conversation, just be like, hey, can we talk about, I could use some time to do X, Y, and Z. And not that you would need to argue something like this, but just saying something like, I know having this in my life is good for my well-being, and which will in turn make me a better wife, a better partner, a better mother. So let's just talk about how we can fit that into our family schedule. And Krista, you know as well as I do that the best arguments are just when the facts are presented.
Absolutely. Well, and also making it sometimes a lot of the times my self-care that's just me focused alone, gives me time to just disconnect and reconnect with
Yeah.
myself. But when I do need to get
Yeah.
those extra steps in or get that fresh air or whatever, a lot of times I will include my
Yeah.
family with me of like, hey, let's get her bike
Yeah.
out. Let's go on a bike ride around the neighborhood. Honey, have you closed your rings today? Because I
Absolutely.
haven't. Let's all do it. Do
Yes.
that together. So
Yes.
family
Yes.
self-care.
Oh, I'm sorry. Family self-care. I did want to mention one other self-care because I know you and I have connected on this. If I ever, on the opposite end, if you ever just need to like curl up in bed, open up Netflix and watch a few episodes of Called Midwife.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, it's like comfort food. It is just cozy.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It really is.
Yes.
It really is.
Well, so many moms can feel like it's a struggle. They feel guilty or they feel selfish when we're taking that time for ourselves. So how can moms reframe that perspective on self-care to not see it as selfish, but to see it as a necessary component to not just their overall health, our overall health, but on our ability to take care of our families too?
I love this question because it's not easy. And like I was saying earlier, considering this is a relatively new way of thinking for a lot of us, like I said, I'm a baby Gen Xer, and I think, and I know that this whole concept of self-care is still kind of a foreign concept to like my mother. Not that she's like, what are you doing? But it's just new. It's something different. So the way you start shifting your mindset is, as with anything, you start with small steps. Just pick one habit or one activity you want to add to your routine. On a grander scale, consider the alternative. If we don't take care of ourselves, the results are not going to be pretty. We get burnout, our partners and our children won't want to spend time with us, and vice versa. So just start with one thing. That's how I start with anything. Just pick one habit, one activity. Be mindful of your social media intake. If you have to mute some people to make yourself feel better, I say do it, because like for me, nothing makes me feel like so awful about myself more these days than seeing those wealthy moms and wealthy mom influencers posting about how they flew their kids to Europe to see Taylor Swift. And I'm like, that's great for you. That's not an option for us. So if you have to mute people like that, do it. It's because none of us need that mindset. And finally, on the idea of make it a family activity, absolutely. Anytime my husband and my daughter and I, anytime we all notice that we're getting irritable, we make a point to go outside, take a drive, just change the scenery, weather permitting, of course. But yeah, make it a family activity.
Love that. What are some practical self-care tips or routines, Serene, that you recommend for moms who may have limited time or limited resources, but they still need to find some ways to nurture their emotional and mental well-being? So I know you've mentioned, for example, ASMR, and is it Reiki? Is that Reiki? Okay.
Reiki.
Videos.
Yes. I'm so excited to talk about this.
I truly, this is a whole new world to me. I have heard a little bit. I know these things exist, but I really know nothing about them. So please tell us about what you found.
I'd be happy to. And it's going to be, I don't want to call it a gag, but it will be a running theme in our podcasting because I wrote an article about it. I've got plenty of articles about
any articles, Serene, by the way, that you're referencing in our conversation. I will be sure to include those in the show notes for sure. So everyone can learn more.
Thank you so much. Amazing. So, I mean, first of all, these are not original ideas. Like you and I have said, going and just taking a walk around the block, getting out into the fresh air. I'm a huge advocate of journaling. I think it's amazing. It's like having a conversation with a non-judgmental version of yourself. And if you don't know where to start, you can always Google journal prompt. Always start simple. How am I feeling today? What do I need? What do I want? What am I grateful for? So those are like really, really, really simple, free activities. Now, yes, the free ASMR and Reiki videos that are available on YouTube, I love talking about these because like when I first discovered them, fascinating. I knew nothing about them. So I discovered these videos. Well, the Reiki ones I discovered during the pandemic. The ASMR ones I did know about already. And so during the pandemic, like most of us, my anxiety was at an all-time high, and I just needed something free and easy to help me fall asleep. So eventually I stumbled on these distance Reiki videos where practitioners would perform Reiki sessions. Now, the thing about Reiki is that it's technically energy healing. And even though I'm kind of embarrassed, even though I have written an article about this, it's still really hard to explain what exactly Reiki is. The most basic explanation is energy healing, and practitioners in these videos, they will use hand gestures and crystals and sound bowls and other tools to draw out negative energy from your body and to help you find a calm balance. All I know is that these people are able to help me relax and drift off to sleep. That's all that matters to me. You do not have to believe in any of this stuff, but I can recommend certain YouTubers who are really good at this, and you can just watch it and breathe and let your body just sink into the bed because it relaxes you. And I think that that's what's most important. I know, yes, we talked about ASMR, which is another option for people who feel that even the distance Reiki might be a little too woo-woo for them. I get that. ASMR has become part of the vernacular these days. It's called Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. And so a lot of the practitioners, I mean, people make fun of it. It's the whispering into your microphone and tapping on the table or tapping onto a hairbrush. Now, I personally don't even like those videos. My favorites are when they do a role play with you. So it's like they're a sleep specialist, or they're making you a cup of tea, or they're styling your hair, or they're a hotel lobby receptionist. All they're doing is creating a comforting environment for you. It doesn't cost a penny, and they're all over YouTube. You can search any subset of these kinds of artists and you will find the right ones for you. So happy Googling, happy searching. I would be happy to list some of my favorite ones. They're called ASM artists.
Love that. Okay.
And they're clearly doing something right because so many of them have like over 1 million subscribers.
Yes.
It's insane.
I'm really interested to check that out because I subscribed to or purchased or whatever the Calm app from the App Store a year or so ago. And there are several nature sounds and things on there that we really enjoy at bedtime just for that white noise. But they also have sleep stories on there. And I don't listen to many of them because my husband's more of just a white noise kind of person. But if it's just me going on to bed, then sometimes I will play these sleep stories. And for example, I've not listened to this, but they have Donna Kelsey on there going over the rules of football. That is a sleep story, which for me, that would be perfect because I am really not a sports fan. And so that would be like the most boring thing in the world to me. So I'm sure she's going over it so calmly and beautifully. But anyway, that sounds,
they're paying her enough.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're paying her enough.
Yes, but I love what you're sharing, that those are free and easy to access just through YouTube. So simple.
Exactly. And I was so excited when I found them because they're great and they're not harming anyone. And like I said, even the Reiki ones, the practitioner may be going into, something a lot deeper for them. And I'm just like, I fell asleep. That's all I care about.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing those resources, Serene.
Of course.
Let's focus now on an area of self-care that's more so just relating to postpartum. So when I had my daughter, I had a birth doula because that's all I knew about. I didn't even know that postpartum doulas existed until just about a year or so ago. And blew my mind. And now I know there's all types of different doulas, which is wonderful. So tell us though, Serene, about your experience. Why did you choose to hire a postpartum doula?
It's a really, really interesting story because I learned a lot about my family culture and a certain subset of New Yorkers throughout this entire process. So just to give everyone context, so I had my baby in 2016. And at that time, all right, let me start at the beginning. I was raised in an affluent New York area Jewish family, and everyone in my extended family, including my mother, for myself and my two siblings, would hire something called a baby nurse for the week after they came home from the hospital. Now, for a very long time, I thought that this was the norm across the country with everyone. Boy, was I wrong. Oh, there is a great, now this is the one article I'm going to mention that I did not write. There is a great article from 2018 on The Cut, and they wrote all about this concept and how, yes, baby nurses are mainly for wealthy families. And so the baby nurse, which I should mention, is not an actual nurse. This person would come live in your home for the first week after you came home from the hospital, and they would generally take care of the baby while you recuperated. Now, like I said, I thought that this was a completely common practice, but by the time I got pregnant, I learned that this was not the case. And yes, limited mainly to upscale white families in the New York area. So my husband and I started taking birth classes through the hospital where we were scheduled to deliver. And that's where we learned that, like, now people don't use baby nurses, but there's something called a postpartum doula. And I was like, well, what's that? And they presented the concept of a postpartum doula to us as someone who was, first of all, cheaper, which is paramount, and that they took care of the mother, not the baby. And I was like, okay, I'm all in, because here we were taking a birthing class, but where was a postpartum class? We all know that when we become mothers, it's basically like, okay, here's the kid. Good luck. And we're just like, what? So I was like, oh my God, someone who could come to my home and be like, the postpartum doula was marketed to us as someone who would be our gentle guide from pre-parenthood life into brand new lives as parents. And I am sure that there are lots of postpartum doulas out there who fit that description. Unfortunately, that was not our experience.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
So, okay. So dun dun dun. We're gonna get to
we're gonna get there. But I liked it. Yeah.
Learned.
Bring on the drama.
So, well, and me being one of these parents, I was not fully aware of the benefits of a postpartum doula. So can you share, and I know you just touched on it, but maybe some insights highlighting the positive impact a well-chosen postpartum doula can have on a family's postpartum journey?
Of course. So in an ideal, I shouldn't even say an ideal situation. So a good postpartum doula, like I said, is there to support the parents, which means they can help you with breastfeeding, emotional and physical recovery from childbirth. They can help with infant soothing and coping skills. Depending, and again, every doula is different. They might do errands or light housework, or they might help take care of the older children. And it's also, like with the baby nurse, it's also really important to remember that they're non-medical professionals.
Okay. So tell us what happened with your postpartum doula and what you learned, because I know in our previous conversation you mentioned not conducting proper research and not having gone through this before. I can imagine maybe you don't know what you don't know, maybe you don't know all the questions to ask. So tell us what happened.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, surprise, surprise, I wrote an article about it. we oh my God, Krista, we learned so much. First of all, the sooner if you are thinking about hiring a postpartum doula, the sooner you get on it, the better. I know that's like the last thing any expecting parent wants to hear, because by the time we had learned about postpartum doulas from our birthing teacher, all of the good ones were already booked out. So that was, issue number one. So we hired the doula that we did because she was available, which in retrospect should have been a red flag. Other red flags that we were oblivious to was she did not have a digital footprint. There weren't any reviews we could look at. There was no social media, no website. This was 2016. I mean, now in 2024, you wouldn't even consider someone who didn't have any of those things. I think we got her information as a referral from a doula that I had initially contacted, but she was not available. So if we had done our due diligence, we would have learned that this doula that we hired was extremely judgy about parents who opt for an epidural, and I was one of those parents. She had no qualms about criticizing pediatricians. She was completely unreliable, and that other than doing a few errands, she did do some grocery shopping and she did do some laundry, which we definitely needed and we were very grateful for. She ended up being pretty useless. So the first thing that happened was, despite paying her retainer, this is where I go back to saying she was unreliable, she was not available to come to our home until a good 4 days after we came home from the hospital. And so we were struggling so much during those first days that my parents went ahead and, they were very generous. They went ahead and they hired us a baby nurse. So when the postpartum doula did come, she wound up being superfluous. And I get the sense that she probably wasn't too happy that we had gone ahead and hired a baby nurse. But I was like, well, I'm sorry, you were not available and we had paid you to be. But her attitude just made everything worse. She was the opposite of peaceful and calming. From the second she walked into our apartment, she criticized me for not holding my baby at all times, because at the time the baby nurse was holding her. Then she criticized my pediatrician, and I was also struggling with breastfeeding, and she was a lactation consultant, but she did not offer any help on that front. What I remember is I was an exhausted zombie, like most of us new moms are. And I remember she offered to take a picture of me with my baby. And I was like, what makes you think I want to have my picture taken right now? So yeah, like I said, she did do laundry and she did get us groceries, and grateful for that. But so one of the mistakes that I did make when in the process of hiring her was I did not clarify what she meant by light housework. And you absolutely need to do that beforehand. I remember I had asked her to touch up the bathroom. And instead of asking me, well, what do you mean by that? Which is a fair question. She just went, I don't do scrubbing. I was like, well, I don't recall scrubbing being a part of it. And was never going to ask her to do something like that. So it was like bad vibes. So she came to our house twice. And on her third scheduled day, she canceled at the last minute. And at that point, we told her, don't come back, because she was causing me more stress, which was the last thing I needed in those early postpartum days. Right. So like I said, and in retrospect, I think she was insulted that we had hired a baby nurse, but it's like, well, you were unreliable. So we had no choice. And I just regret not checking her references and asking her more about what a typical visit would have entailed.
Sure. Oh my goodness. That is the complete opposite of what any new parent needs.
So
it sounds like
awful. It was. I mean,
a friend a friend who didn't charge you could have shown up and done laundry and ran grocery errands. My gosh.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, I was just, it was such a teachable moment for us, and I love to share this story because I want people to know what they should do and what they should look for. And it is in no way criticizing the profession of postpartum doulas, because I think they could be a huge help. but it puts a lot of the onus on the expectant
Sure.
parents. We have to do a
Because
lot of work.
in a I can't remember which episode it was, but a couple of episodes back, I had spoken with she's a nurse, and she offers lots of resources for moms. And one of the things she had said, she has multiple kids, and she was talking about how for moms who it's not their first kid, if maybe it's their second or their third or whatever, talking about you don't necessarily need a baby shower. And I know some families do those like sprinkles where you get it's a smaller kind of baby shower. And so something she was suggesting is, instead of a shower, ask friends and family to go in on a postpartum doula, because they are expensive.
Yes.
But they can be so worth it when it's the right one.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great idea. I love that.
Well, thank you for sharing that experience. And I'm so sorry you experienced that. The silver lining on it is now you can help other parents and point them towards resources, perhaps, to find the right match.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to share my advice to those parents. The last thing I know you want to do is do more planning beforehand, but I do believe that, because we did not do this, the parents need to establish exactly what kind of support they know they're going to need from the postpartum doula, and then work from there. Will they need breastfeeding support? And if so, make sure the doula is a lactation consultant and check her references. Will they need support for older siblings? Make sure the doula has experience with older children and ask for references. Will you need help with the laundry and with groceries? All of that needs to be discussed beforehand. And finally, if they just say light housework, you've got to establish what that means beforehand. You have to, or else then it's just going to be a giant ball of stress.
Like so many different scenarios we go through in life, the setting proper expectations can be so key.
Oh, so true.
Well, that's a wrap for today's conversation with Serene. If you enjoyed our chat, make sure you check out her podcast, Emotional Abuse is Real. I'd especially like to direct you to her episodes that dropped on June 5th and 12th, where I opened up about my emotionally abusive first marriage. You can find links to her show along with her socials in today's show notes at secretmomhacks.com/episode 86. Be on the lookout for my next episode with Serene. I'll be releasing part 4 next month, and we'll be talking about remote work and career flexibility as a parent. Go back and listen to parts 1 and 2 of our conversation, which you can find on episodes 77 and 80. I'm curious what your favorite part of our interview was. I hope you're walking away inspired with tips either for yourself or that new mom you know. If that's the case, please follow me on your favorite podcast platform if you haven't already. Give me a 5-star rating and leave a review sharing your favorite takeaway so far. You can do all of that by going to ratethispodcast.com/secretmomhacks. Don't forget to stop by secretmomhacks.com, where you can find resources and enter your email address so every new show is delivered straight to your inbox. Stay tuned for next week's episode, and until then, you've got this, mama.